The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council sparkled with 1,000 floating lights. Beings from 300 different worlds mingled together, their voices creating a gentle hum that filled the massive space. At the center of it all stood James Miller, Earth's ambassador, raising a glass of shimmering blue liquid in celebration. To 50 years of progress, he said, his voice carried across the hall by hidden speakers. And to humanity's full acceptance into the Galactic Council. The assembled aliens cheered, their various appendages lifting drinks of their own. To any observer, Miller appeared to be the perfect picture of diplomatic joy. His silver hair caught the light just so, and his practiced smile never wavered. But behind his eyes, a storm was brewing. Just 3 hours earlier, Miller had been in his private office aboard the Earth Embassy station. A junior clerk had brought him a data crystal, saying only that it had been found misfiled in the ancient records section. Miller hadn't thought much of it at first. Paperwork errors happened even with advanced alien technology. But when he plugged the crystal into his reader, his whole world had changed. Now, standing among humanity's supposed allies, Miller fought to keep his hands from shaking. The data crystal had contained classified council documents from before Earth's first contact. They detailed plans, calculations, and cold discussions about the best way to test humanity's potential. The first contact war hadn't been an accident. It hadn't even been a misunderstanding, as Earth had been told. It had been engineered, planned, and executed with surgical precision by the very beings who now smiled and congratulated humanity on joining their ranks. Miller took another sip of his drink, remembering the horror of those days. He'd been just a boy when the alien ships appeared over every major city. The Council's chosen race, the Vor, had attacked without warning. Millions died in the first hour, billions more in the weeks that followed. But humanity had survived. More than that, they had fought back with such fierce determination that the Vor were forced to retreat. The Council had then stepped in, claiming to be peacekeepers, offering humanity a chance to join galactic civilization. Everyone had called it a miracle. The documents told a different story. The Council had chosen the Vor specifically because their weapons technology would cause maximum damage while leaving Earth's resources intact. They had calculated exactly how many humans would likely die, and which population centers to target to properly test species resilience. Ambassador Miller, a tall insectoid being, clicked its mandibles in greeting. Such a wonderful day for your species. You must be very proud. Miller nodded, his diplomatic training kicking in automatically. Indeed, Council Member Green. Humanity has come a long way since our first contact. Green's antenna waved in agreement. Oh yes, your species showed remarkable adaptation during the unfortunate conflicts of that time. Such a tragedy, but look how it made you stronger. Miller felt bile rise in his throat but kept smiling. The documents had shown that Green had been one of the primary architects of the test. The being standing before him had personally calculated how many children would need to die to properly gauge human response patterns. Stronger indeed, Miller said softly. Humanity learned many lessons from those days. As Green moved away to mingle with other guests, Miller pulled out his personal communicator. With steady fingers, he typed a simple message to Earth's Security Council. Protocol Dark Winter is now active. The evidence has been confirmed. Within seconds, his communicator buzzed with the response. Understood. Phase 1 begins. Estimated timeline: 5 years until full implementation. Miller pocketed the device and looked around the glittering hall. None of these beings suspected anything. They truly believed that humans were just another young, grateful species, eager to learn at the feet of their betters. They had no idea that their carefully documented test of humanity had planted the seeds of their own destruction. In testing humanity's resilience, they had created something far more dangerous than they could imagine. A species that knew exactly what it was capable of, and now had a very good reason to show them. Miller raised his glass one more time, knowing that this would be the last peaceful celebration the Council would enjoy for a very long time. To the future, he said quietly to himself. May they learn what happens when you underestimate humanity. Admiral Kate Thompson stood at the viewing window of Earth's secret shipyard, hidden deep within the asteroid belt. Her reflection showed a woman in her 50s, with short gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Below her, thousands of workers moved like ants across the skeletal frames of ships that officially didn't exist. "Status report," she said to the hologram floating beside her. Dr. Mark Anderson's image flickered slightly as he consulted his datapad. "We're ahead of schedule on the quantum communications network. The Council's monitoring systems still can't detect it. They're too busy looking for traditional subspace signals." Thompson allowed herself a small smile. For 5 years, they had been building in secret, preparing for the day humanity would strike back. The Council thought they were monitoring everything humans did. They had no idea that humans had already found ways around their technology. "And the reverse engineering project?" she asked. "Even better than we hoped," Anderson replied, his eyes lighting up with excitement. "Remember that Council defense system we captured last month? We didn't just crack it. We improved it. Their own weapons won't know what hit them." Thompson nodded, remembering the day Ambassador Miller had activated Protocol Dark Winter. She had been skeptical at first. Taking on the entire Galactic Council seemed impossible. But then she saw the evidence of their betrayal, of how they had orchestrated the First Contact War just to test humanity. "Show me the new stealth system," she ordered. Anderson's hologram waved his hand, and a complex diagram appeared in the air. "It's beautiful, really. The Council's ships use a standard detection pattern because they've never needed to change it. No species has challenged them in 10,000 years. But we found a blind spot in their scans, a tiny flaw they've never fixed because they're too arrogant to think anyone could exploit it." Thompson watched as the diagram showed their ships slipping perfectly through gaps in the Council's detection grid. "And they still haven't noticed our construction." "They're not even looking," Anderson chuckled. "According to their psychology reports, humans are too primitive to attempt large-scale space construction without obvious signs. They think we're still learning how to use their basic technology." A quiet alarm chimed, and Thompson checked her wrist display. "Time for another Council inspection. You know what to do." At her words, the massive shipyard began to transform. Massive holographic projectors activated, hiding the warships behind images of civilian mining operations. Workers quickly moved to preset positions, playing the roles of simple asteroid miners. By the time the Council's inspection ship arrived, they would see exactly what they expected to see: a primitive human mining operation, nothing more. "They're so convinced of their superiority," Anderson said softly. "Did you know their latest report calls us admirably determined?" Thompson's face hardened. "They killed millions of us to satisfy their curiosity. Now they treat us like children." She turned to face the hologram fully. "Is the weapon ready?" Anderson's image nodded. "Phase 1 is complete. We can shut down their quantum core networks anytime we want. They won't be able to coordinate their defenses when we strike. And they won't see it coming," Thompson added, "because their own tests prove that humans are too primitive to understand quantum mechanics at their level." She looked out at the hidden shipyard again, where humanity's revenge was taking shape in steel and silence. The Council had wanted to test humanity's resilience. They were about to learn just how resilient humans could be. "Send word to Ambassador Miller," she ordered. "Tell him that when he gives the signal, we'll be ready. The Council thought they were testing us, but they really just taught us exactly how to beat them." As Anderson's hologram disappeared, Thompson allowed herself another small smile. In just a few more months, the Council would learn a very important lesson. Never underestimate a species you've given every reason to want revenge. "Inspection ship approaching," a voice announced over the speakers. "Perfect," Thompson said quietly. "Let's show them exactly what they expect to see. Let them keep thinking they know what humanity is capable of." Behind her, hidden by technology the Council thought impossible for humans to develop, Earth's fleet waited in the darkness, ready to teach the galaxy's oldest civilization its final lesson. High Speaker Gray stood before the massive window in the council's main chamber, his tall, silvery form reflecting the light of 1,000 stars. As the oldest living member of the council, he had overseen the testing and admission of dozens of species into galactic civilization. Humans were just the latest, and in his view, one of the least impressive. High Speaker, a quiet voice called from behind him. I have concerns about the humans. Gray turned slowly to face Officer Blue, one of the council's junior intelligence analysts. Blue was young by council standards, barely 300 years old, and like most young ones, prone to unnecessary worry. Concerns. Gray's voice carried the weight of 10,000 years of council authority. About primitives who still think hiding ships behind asteroids is clever. Blue stepped forward, holding up a data pad. That's just it, sir. Our monitoring stations have detected unusual patterns in their activities. Their energy usage doesn't match their reported technological level, and there are gaps in our surveillance data. That gaps? Gray laughed, the sound echoing through the chamber. Our systems are perfect. They have been for millennia. Any gaps you're seeing are simply due to human incompetence in reporting their activities. But sir, Blue persisted, there's more. Trade reports show they're purchasing quantum materials far beyond their supposed capabilities, and their ambassador, Miller, has been meeting with representatives from several younger species. Gray waved a long-fingered hand dismissively. Of course they're buying advanced materials. They're like children with new toys, eager to understand them. And Miller is a diplomat. Meeting with other species is his job. He turned back to the window, remembering how easily the Council had manipulated Earth's first contact. Humans had responded exactly as predicted to the controlled crisis, showing impressive resilience, but nothing that suggested real strategic thinking. Sir, Blue tried one more time. My analysis suggests they might have discovered information about the first contact war test. If they know what we did. Enough. Gray's voice cracked like thunder. You waste my time with paranoid theories about primitives. Humans are exactly what we made them to be. Resilient but manageable. Our tests proved this. Other council members began filing into the chamber for the daily session. Gray watched their reflections in the window. Beings from the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy, each one representing thousands of years of carefully maintained superiority. The Council has ruled the galaxy for longer than humans have known how to make fire, Gray said coldly. We have guided the evolution of 1,000 species. We have tested hundreds. Humans are nothing special. Blue bowed slightly, knowing better than to argue further. Yes, High Speaker. I apologize for my excessive concern. As Blue left the chamber, another council member approached Gray. Was the young one bothering you with more theories? Nothing important, Gray replied. Just the usual paranoia about humans. Some of our younger members seem to forget their place, and the proper place of primitive species. The chamber filled with the day's usual business. Reports were given about various species development. Plans were made for future tests of promising civilizations. None of the council members noticed when Blue quietly filed one final report. War and Ing. Human activity patterns match historical records of species preparing for military action. Recommend immediate investigation. The report was automatically filed under low-priority concerns from junior members and forgotten. After all, the Council's tests had proven that humans were at least a century away from being any kind of threat. Their own data proved it. Their own systems confirmed it. In the grand gallery outside the chamber, Ambassador Miller walked past Officer Blue, nodding politely. Neither gave any sign that they noticed each other. Neither betrayed any hint that humanity had found every report Blue had filed, or that those reports had helped them perfect their deception. The Council had created their own perfect trap, built from thousands of years of unquestioned superiority. They were so certain of their own perfection that they couldn't see the danger right in front of them. In just a few more days, they would learn how wrong they were. The Galactic Council's centennial gathering was the largest celebration in known space. 10,000 ships surrounded the Council's central station, representing every major species in the galaxy. Fireworks of exotic matter lit up the void between vessels, creating patterns that could be seen from light years away. In his command center hidden within the asteroid belt, Ambassador Miller checked his watch one final time. All ships in position. Yes, sir. Admiral Thompson's voice came through the quantum communicator. Technology the Council thought impossible for humans to create. Strike teams are ready. The Council's sensors still show nothing but mining operations. Miller took a deep breath. Send the signal. Across Council space, over 300 human warships dropped their holographic camouflage. They had been hiding in plain sight for months, disguised as asteroids, space debris, and civilian vessels. Each ship carried weapons reverse-engineered from Council technology, improved in ways their creators had never imagined. On the Council station, High Speaker Gray was giving his opening speech. For 10,000 years, we have guided the younger races. His words cut off as every screen in the station suddenly went dark. When they came back on, they showed footage from Earth's first contact war. Cities burning, children crying, millions dying in carefully orchestrated attacks. You tested us. Miller's voice boomed through every speaker in Council space. Now we will test you. The human ships struck simultaneously. Their quantum-linked weapons couldn't be blocked because they operated on principles the Council had deemed impossible. Defensive stations that had stood for thousands of years went dark in seconds. This is impossible, Gray shouted in the Council chamber. Their technology is primitive. Our tests proved. Your tests. Miller's voice cut in again. You mean the slaughter you call the test? The one where you killed millions just to see how we would react? On screens across Council space, classified documents began to appear. The Council's own records of their test of humanity. Every dirty secret, every cold calculation, every casual discussion of how many humans needed to die to get accurate data. Admiral Thompson's fleet moved with surgical precision. They didn't target civilian ships or population centers. Instead, they disabled military installations, weapons platforms, and communication hubs. Each strike was calculated to create maximum fear with minimum casualties, a demonstration of both power and restraint that made the Council's own brutality look even worse. How are they doing this? A Council member screamed as another defense platform went dark. Our systems say their ships don't even exist. In the command center, Miller watched the chaos unfold. Phase 2, he ordered. Across Council space, hidden transmitters activated. They broadcast on frequencies that targeted specific psychological weaknesses in Council species, frequencies discovered during years of careful study. The proud Council members, who had ruled space for millennia, found themselves facing their deepest cultural fears and taboos. The Centennial Gathering dissolved into panic. Ships tried to flee but found their navigation systems compromised. Defense forces tried to respond but couldn't coordinate their actions. The Council's perfect systems, unchanged for thousands of years, were being torn apart by the very species they had dismissed as primitive. Stop this. Gray's voice shook as he broadcast on all frequencies. We demand. You demand nothing. Miller replied calmly. You are no longer in a position to make demands. Humanity is not here to destroy you, High Speaker. We're here to teach you what a real test looks like. The human ships moved into their final positions, surrounding the Council station. They had achieved total tactical superiority in less than an hour, using technology the Council had thought impossible and strategies their arrogance had prevented them from imagining. In the Council chamber, Gray stared at the screens showing humanity's fleet. How? He whispered. The tests showed you were primitive. That's the problem with tests, High Speaker. Miller's voice was cold. Sometimes the ones being tested learn more than the ones doing the testing. As alarms blared across Council space, humanity prepared to deliver its final lesson about the true cost of underestimating a species that had learned to turn revenge into an art form. Dr. Mark Anderson sat in his control room on Earth, surrounded by holographic displays showing the chaos unfolding across Council space. His fingers danced across multiple control panels as he prepared to reveal humanity's deepest secret, the one even the Council's best spies had never discovered. "Start the activation sequence," he ordered his team. "Wake up all our sleeper agents." Across Council territory, thousands of seemingly ordinary maintenance robots suddenly stopped their regular tasks. These machines had been carefully placed over the past 5 years, each one built by human engineers to look exactly like standard Council cleaning units. Now, they revealed their true purpose. "How many did we manage to plant?" Admiral Thompson asked through the quantum link. Anderson smiled as his screens lit up with green activation signals. "Over 10,000 units. We have them in every major Council facility. They've been mapping networks, recording secrets, and waiting for this moment." In the Council's main security center, alarms began blaring as their automated defense systems suddenly turned against them. Security doors slammed shut, trapping Council forces in their own bases. Weapon systems powered down. Communication networks crashed. "This is impossible," a Council technician shouted, trying desperately to regain control. "These are our own systems." "No," Anderson's voice came through their speakers. "They're our systems now. We've had 5 years to study every weakness, every flaw, every shortcut your species took because you thought you were untouchable." On the main Council station, High Speaker Gray watched in horror as displays showed him the truth. Those simple maintenance robots, the ones they had barely noticed cleaning their halls, had been gathering data all along. Humans hadn't just beaten the Council's technology. They had turned it against them. "Ambassador Miller," Gray called out, his voice shaking. "You must understand what this means. The Council has maintained order for thousands of years, without our control." "Control?" Miller's voice was cold. "You mean like how you controlled the First Contact War? How you controlled the death of millions just to run your tests?" In his control room, Anderson activated the final phase of their plan. Every screen in Council space began showing classified footage, the Council's own security recordings of them planning their tests of various species. Years of secret meetings, casual discussions of genocide, and calculated manipulation of developing civilizations. "We found these records 3 years ago," Anderson announced. "Your security was impressive, but you never thought to check the cleaning robots for quantum processing units. After all, humans were too primitive to build those, right?" The Council members watched in horror as their darkest secrets were broadcast across the galaxy. The maintenance robots, now revealed as advanced infiltration units, had compromised every level of their security. "But our systems were perfect," a Council member protested. "Our technology was flawless." Anderson laughed. "Flawless? You've been using the same base code for over 1,000 years. You never updated it because you thought no one could possibly understand it. Want to know how long it took us to crack it? 6 months. In the Council chamber, Officer Blue stepped forward. The young intelligence officer who had warned them about human activities now spoke with a different voice, a human voice. "Humanity thanks you for your cooperation," Blue said, their form shimming to reveal advanced holographic technology. "Your arrogance made our job much easier." Gray sank into his chair as he realized the full extent of humanity's infiltration. They hadn't just beaten the Council's technology. They had been living among them, watching them, learning their weaknesses, all while the Council congratulated themselves on how well they had tested and contained humanity. "Why?" Gray whispered. "Why go to all this trouble? You could have simply attacked us." Miller's voice was firm. "Because we needed to prove something. Not just to you, but to every species you've ever tested. Your time of playing games with other civilizations is over." Anderson watched his displays as the last security systems fell under human control. The Council's perfect order, maintained for thousands of years, had been undone in a single day by the very species they had dismissed as primitive. "The test is over," Miller announced to all of Council space. You failed. The next 24 hours saw the complete collapse of the oldest power structure in known space. On thousands of worlds, beings watched their screens as more and more evidence of Council manipulation came to light. Each revelation sparked new outrage, new demands for justice. Admiral Thompson stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching tactical displays as former Council member species chose sides. Some tried to flee. Others begged for mercy. A few attempted to fight back with weapons that no longer worked. Status report, she called out. 90% of Council military installations are now under our control, her tactical officer replied. No civilian casualties reported. Our precision strikes worked exactly as planned. Thompson nodded with satisfaction. This was the difference between humanity and the Council. When they had tested Earth, they hadn't cared about civilian deaths. But humanity's revenge was surgical, targeted, and carefully designed to avoid innocent casualties. In the Council's main chamber, now under human control, Ambassador Miller watched as representatives from younger species demanded answers from their former masters. The Council members, those who hadn't fled or been arrested, could only sit in shame as their crimes were laid bare. You tested us too. A representative from a younger species shouted at High Speaker Gray. You engineered wars on our world just to see how we would react. It was necessary, Gray tried to explain, his voice weak. We needed to understand. You needed to feel powerful, Miller cut in. You needed to prove you were superior. And now look at you. On screens across the chamber, more footage played. Evidence gathered by human agents over 5 years of infiltration. The Council hadn't just tested Earth. They had been manipulating species for thousands of years, starting wars, causing disasters, all to gather data for their endless tests. Admiral, Miller spoke into his communicator. How many Council ships tried to fight back? Less than 10%, Thompson replied. Most of them surrendered as soon as they realized their weapons wouldn't work. Turns out their famous courage was mostly based on having superior technology. Officer Blue, now revealed as Agent Lisa Hart of Earth Intelligence, stepped forward with more data files. We found their complete testing archives. They've been doing this for over 10,000 years. Millions of deaths, countless wars, all carefully documented and filed away. The younger species representatives grew more angry with each revelation. Species that had once competed for Council favor now united in their rage against their former masters. The Council's carefully built hierarchy was crumbling before their eyes. But what happens now? A Council member asked desperately. Without our guidance, there will be chaos. Miller's laugh was cold. Guidance? Is that what you call manipulation and murder? He turned to address the gathered representatives of younger species. Humanity is not here to become the new Council. We're here to end the age of tests and manipulation. From now on, every species will have a true voice in galactic affairs. Around the Council station, human ships maintained their positions. Their weapons remained powered down. They didn't need them anymore. The sight of their advanced technology, so far beyond what the Council thought possible, was enough to keep order. How? Gray finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. How did you advance so quickly? Our tests showed. Your tests showed what we wanted them to show, Thompson replied through the communication system. You were so busy testing us that you never realized we were learning from every test. Learning your weaknesses. Learning how to beat you at your own game. Miller watched as more Council members were led away by human security forces. Their 1,000-year reign had ended not with a massive battle, but with the quiet revelation of their own arrogance. The age of tests is over, he announced to the gathered representatives. Now begins the age of cooperation, and if anyone tries to set themselves up as the new Council, he gestured to the human fleet visible through the chamber's windows. Well, humanity will be watching. 1 month after humanity's takeover of Council space, the Great Chamber looked very different. Gone were the towering thrones used by Council members to look down on younger species. Instead, a circular arrangement of equal seats surrounded a central speaking area. Representatives from every spacefaring species sat together, regardless of their technological level or age of their civilization. Ambassador Miller stood in the center, addressing the first meeting of the new Galactic Assembly. "The last remnants of Council control have been eliminated," he announced. "Their hidden weapons installations have been found. Their secret testing facilities have been shut down. Their victims have been given voice." Dr. Anderson's hologram appeared next to him, displaying data streams that everyone could now access. "We've broken down the Council's information barriers. All species now have equal access to technological knowledge. No more artificial restrictions. No more tests." In a sealed chamber nearby, High Speaker Gray watched the proceedings on a screen. He and other Council leaders awaited trial for their crimes against developing civilizations. Their famous arrogance had vanished, replaced by the hollow look of those who had finally faced true justice. "I still don't understand," Gray said to Admiral Thompson, who stood guard. "You had the power to destroy us completely. Why show mercy?" Thompson's face remained stern. "Because we're not you. We didn't do this for power or revenge alone. We did it to make things right." Back in the main chamber, representatives from formerly suppressed species were speaking freely for the first time. Species that the Council had deemed too primitive shared technological innovations they had kept hidden for centuries. Others revealed cultural and scientific knowledge that the Council had dismissed. "The Council's greatest crime wasn't the tests," Miller continued. "It was convincing the galaxy that only they could maintain order, that only they had the right to judge which species deserved to advance." Agent Hart, formerly known as Officer Blue, stepped forward with final piece of evidence. "We found this in their deepest archives. The Council itself was originally created by another species, one they tested and destroyed so long ago that they erased all record of it. They became exactly what they claimed to protect against." The chamber fell silent as this revelation sank in. Then, a representative from one of the youngest spacefaring races stood up. "How do we know Earth won't become the new Council?" they asked. "You have proven your power. What stops you from taking control?" Miller smiled and pressed a button. Above the chamber, a massive screen showed live footage of human ships across Council space. One by one, they were powering down their advanced weapons. Some were already being converted into exploration vessels or trade ships. "Humanity remembers what it's like to be tested, to be judged, to be deemed inferior," Miller explained. "We have no desire to replace one tyranny with another. Instead, we offer this." Dr. Anderson's hologram displayed a new document, the Galactic Charter of Rights. It guaranteed freedom of development for all species, banned forced testing of developing civilizations, and established a rotating leadership system where no single species could hold power for long. "But what about protection?" another representative asked. "The Council at least kept order." Admiral Thompson stepped into the chamber. "Earth will help establish a joint defense force, drawn equally from all member species. We'll share our technology, train together, and protect each other, not as masters and servants, but as equals." The chamber erupted in discussion. Species that had been enemies under Council rule began forming alliances. Trade agreements were drafted. Cultural exchanges were planned. The galaxy was transforming from a hierarchy into a community. Gray watched it all from his cell, finally understanding. "You didn't just beat us," he said quietly. "You made us irrelevant." Miller's final address echoed through every corner of known space. "The age of tests is over. The age of cooperation begins. And if anyone ever again tries to set themselves up as the masters of other species, remember this day. Remember how humanity answered the Council's tests. Remember that no power lasts forever when it's built on the suffering of others." As the first session of the Galactic Assembly ended, ships from 100 worlds lifted off together. Among them were Earth's vessels, no longer hidden, no longer preparing for war. They flew in formation with their new allies, ready to explore the galaxy not as conquerors or testers, but as equals in a new age of peace and discovery.